lot of time. Ever since the Friday night, tell me if you got me on your mind. Oh, something about you makes me go.
Welcome to the KYP podcast. My name is Dany. I'm with my co-host
James.
Kevin.
So it's been around a good year that we've done our podcast. We started in February with the idea. I think the guys came up to me with that idea. And now we're December 20-something?
2022? No?
Well, like December 19th.
Oh, the date.
18th or 19th.
19th.
Yeah. So I think this episode would be a great kind of recap of what we've learned throughout our journey of starting with Jay and Kevin directly from a phone sitting at a table with no mic to us having a full-fledged studio with equipment and all of that. So let's start very simple. Guys, like, how did you come up with the podcast idea?
Yeah, I think me and James are just sitting in a car one day, kind of having a conversation about a lot of the things we've learned through growing up. And I think, you know, a lot of things clicked for us in that conversation, and we felt like we had so much to say because it's kind of like we're becoming adults and gaining maturity for the first time. And I think me and James were on the same page at the same time. And I feel like we just had this urge to kind of explore more deeply these ideas and also share it with others, right?
Yeah, so I think it was, to give some context, I think during that time, it was right after COVID, or I think it was in the middle of COVID.
Middle of COVID, yeah. We were in a lockdown. There was a curfew.
Yeah, so I took a break creatively. Actually, I was doing Kill Your Pride for the brand, but I took a sort of a break in, social media, going, taking photos, taking outfits. And Kevin was trying to get into that field. So that ignited the fire, the passion in me to pursue something that's different than what I was already doing. So when we had that conversation, and it really inspired me, and you were telling me about your story, what you went throughout COVID, the mental health that you suffered during that time, it really inspired me that, what I was doing this whole time could inspire my boy Kevin.
Yeah.
That's something. I guess you could tell us a little bit about like what you went through, just to give some context to the people, to Dany as well, before we get into it.
So to put it simply, I was in a place, I would say, for the majority of COVID, where I was just very unhappy with the path in life I was on, in terms of academically, work-wise, career-wise. And, I really I feel like my personality is more suited for kind of a more outgoing personality, this type of interacting with people, being more creative, rather than the path I was going down, which is very structured, corporate, that kind of trajectory.
Yeah.
And I was really depressed because if I wanted to pursue my own things, I had to kind of break my parents' heart, especially my dad.
Sure, it's the toughest thing to do.
Yeah. And, long story short, I came to the decision that I have to live life for myself. Above any other voice in my head, I should be listening to myself over what social media is telling me, what the academic institutions are telling me, and even what my parents are telling me.
So you're asking me how to become selfish.
That
was that conversation, right?
I think you and I both, we're being selfish, but we also very much are considerate of our family and make sure that.
Oh no, that's what I mean. It's like, how did you like? You're asking me, how did you break that?
Yeah, how did you do that? Yeah,
that generational, I guess, path. Because
Yeah.
I was about to do the DEP and work at the corner store, take over the store, and work there for the rest of my life.
Like, how did you have that conversation? How did that happen for you? I was trying to get advice, right?
For sure.
And through that conversation, the the topic of Kill Your Pride, the clothing brand you've been working on since you were a teen, that's part of the reason why I came to you, because I saw from a young age you kind of didn't buy in completely to like the school path. You were like,
oh yeah, I was straight out like kind of trying to drop out.
Yeah, exactly, right. But you were doing these cool creative things on the side. I think you were on YouTube when YouTube was very, very young, very early on.
In high school, yeah.
Right. And you were also doing these clothing ideas. You're actually getting clothes printed with your designs. Yeah. I think you sold a couple collections as well. Yeah. Nothing big, but you were always
trying something.
Yeah, you were always being creative. And that's part of the reason why I came to you in the first place, to have that conversation. And like you said, through that conversation, we realized that Kill Your Pride was about all of the
about letting go of yourself and just trying something new.
Yeah. And from that, we kind of thought like, oh wow, this thing that you created when you were 14, messing around with clothes, inspired me to kind of really open that path for myself. And that kind of led us to the idea of this might be able to do the same for others as well. And so
like teach others, right?
Teach others, right?
Yeah. So that's why the podcast idea came through, right? Because we were both listening to podcasts at the time, and we're like, this is such a great platform. And then we were also talking about how everything content-wise is so short form, like 10, 20 seconds, max 30 seconds.
Very surface level, very controversial, like viral type
focused,
content.
Yeah. So it's hard to
fast
learn.
Food.
Yeah, fast food. Yeah. It's like a factory of just content, right? And then so we did our first episode, which we're never gonna show.
Never gonna show. We were like amped up on the idea the next day. Like we weren't doing anything, right? It was just pure energy, like pure enthusiasm. But we filmed we filmed the audio, recorded the audio on an iPhone.
On my iPhone, we recorded the video on your iPhone.
Yeah.
And then the stand was even a stand. It was like something I got on Amazon that's like to take photos. Yeah. It was like the flexible shit. So it was bad. Yeah. But it was good. The content was good, but the
yeah, the technical aspects of how we were going about it was not good. But the idea was there. And I think after 3 nights in a row of us spending 4 hours to get just like a 45-minute clip together,
that was 3 hours, that podcast.
Yeah. And I think after that experience, immediately James was like, all right, I need to introduce you.
I know somebody.
I need to introduce you to someone, because we ain't doing this shit again.
I know somebody, don't worry.
And then that's how we met Dany. Dany, what did you think? I think the first time we came to talk to you was very casual. We just, because you're like video audio expert in terms of our friend group.
Well, the reason why I thought of Dany, first of all, just to bring it back to the beginning, was because Dany is one of the other people I know that broke that generational path, like from very early on, like super early on, and he's 100% in it. Not like he's working somewhere else and doing photography.
Yeah, he's full time.
He's full time, so he's the best person that I knew that would know how you feel and how I felt. So yeah.
No, but thank you for considering me.
God.
Thank God, yeah.
The light.
So I wouldn't say I'm an expert per se. I do have a lot of knowledge. I've done my fair share of researching throughout all of these things, especially video photography. And photography, a lot of people think, okay, you just learn how to press a button on a camera and that's done. But then there's a technical aspect of it. And then when you want to level up, you learn lighting, you learn composition, you learn all of that. Mm-hmm. But people don't realize for video, and funny thing you guys might ask, is that I used to be a videographer before I was a photographer. So learning about video has to do with everything photography-wise, but then on top of that, you add other stuff on it, right? You have to understand your lighting, you have to understand your framing, you have to understand audio, because audio is the most important thing. People don't realize it. The amount of times you go watch, back in the days we used to watch these bootlegged ass movies.
Yeah. filmed on a camera.
Yeah, filmed on a camera.
Okay.
You can watch that, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter as long as the audio is good.
Yeah.
But if you watch a YouTube video and the video has, let's say, a lot of wind. So imagine if, Jay, tell me something.
Hey, how are you? How are you, Dany? It's nice.
So you kind of, you hate that because you can't hear anything, right? So
annoying.
audio is so important. And so that's why I learned a lot of,
Like part of the experience.
yeah, it's
right?
part of the experience, right? Audio visual experience.
Yeah.
And I remember when the guys first came to see me, they sent me the video and holy shit, that thing was a 3-hour video that I watched like twice. You guys made me, no, I wouldn't say waste, but I took 6 hours of my life to watch that.
Torture.
And the fun part is that it reminded me of one of my good clients who is a public speaker. He came to me with an idea. He basically filmed a bunch of his videos in his mom's basement. Super low quality video. He had like a shitty mic. He didn't have any lighting, so his footage basically looked like
It was made out of basement.
yeah, but
Awesome.
also the fact there was so much grain on the footage that you
It's too
basically you had to. It looked like someone passed over sandpaper. You could use that footage as sandpaper to like sand your furnitures.
What an analogy.
And the content was there, and so I said, "Hey, you need X equipment, you need this and that." And then later on, he came back, said, "You know what? Fuck the equipment, Dany. Can you just film my stuff so I don't have to worry about it?" So it kind of reminded me of that. So you guys approached me with that idea. I listened to everything, a lot of banter, a lot of stuff you guys could cut out. The content was there, it's just the execution was not.
So there was potential.
There's definitely potential. I think everyone has potential, just not a lot of people see it until you have a fully produced episode. And I wouldn't say right now we're not at a stage where, everything's perfect. I wouldn't call ourselves like master of podcasts and stuff,
No,
but we're
no way.
starting.
Yeah.
But because of all the equipment, the content, I would say a bit of the coaching that I gave you guys, you guys are basically at a stage where you can see the end of the road, the end of the tunnel.
When we first came to you, what would you say was the biggest area we had to work on?
Definitely, I think a lot of people, they don't realize how hard it is to start a podcast because they think, let me just banter. Let me just say what's ever on my mind. People will listen to me. But bantering is good between friends. But if someone comes to you and talk on a podcast, it's two different things, right? The last thing you want is, let's say you go to class, you listen to your teacher. Let's say your teacher is very enthusiastic, and then you have another teacher who's not enthusiastic. Which one would you prefer to listen to? Would you listen to the teacher who says, let me grab something, coffee machine? So the coffee is something that's very important, There's espresso, you can have percolation coffee, you can have drip coffee, things like that. And then keep talking, you get interested in that topic.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you have the teacher who's, you're talking like this and
There's so many of those.
and there's this, that, but I remember this thing that's you don't really want to listen to that. And so there's a technical aspect that comes in podcast, but I think what people don't realize it is in the content itself, delivering the content in a way that makes people engaged, who wants to listen more to that topic is super important. That's how you retain a large listener.
Yeah,
And-
from my experience, it was almost having to learn a new way of communicating, a new way of speaking, because this is not how you normally talk in a live conversation, not recorded, because you don't have to account for someone else listening to it, right? You can cut over each other, you can do ums and ahs, it doesn't really matter. But when you hear it back on the audio, it's awful. Like the first, I would say 4 episodes we did, I don't even ever want to see that shit. Like it's tough.
It's hard to watch yourself too in those kind of situations because you have to be hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Mm.
And when you're watching yourself talk and like ramble and banter and saying a, it's kind of hard, but that's how we're learning. It's a learning process.
Yeah. Dany, can you walk us through a little bit of that learning process? Like, talk about the experience of having to correct us when we're live recording and
so many sessions over there. Guys, you guys need to do this.
We would get lectured every episode back in the day.
Well, I'd say for me, I have the blessing. I was blessed by my client who I edit his public speaking videos. And so a lot of people don't realize the importance of having someone there who can be critical of you. I used to have these conferences and he says, Dany, since you're my favorite person because you do all my videos, I'm gonna come to all your conferences. First thing I see, him sitting in the front row with a notebook. When I finish my conference, his notebook's like 2-page filled. And he's like, you need to work on this. You need to work on that. You need to get rid of this. You need to refine this. And so when you have this type of person who is your accountability partner, who can tell you what's wrong, then it helps you improve. And that's where I was there for both of you guys, right? And I think the first thing that is super important is the active listening part. You can remove everything that I can teach someone or a public speaking coach can teach you. The active listening part is the most important thing. The way I'd like to basically frame stuff is that you have two types. You have, let's say, two categories, X and Y. And then if you combine them, you have, 4 quadrants. You have the people who suck at asking, you have the question on X, and then you have active listening on Y. So then you have the worst types of people who are people who don't ask questions and people who aren't active listeners. You say, yeah, so my day has been going well and this and that. I like to do this in my life. And then you turn to the person says, yeah, anyway, so my dog was like, that's the shittiest person to talk to because they don't listen. They don't ask you questions. It's all about themselves. Yeah. Then you have the people who are active listeners. Then you have the people who aren't active listeners, but ask questions, who are the types of people you meet at every networking cocktails, where, hey, what's your job? Yeah, I work at XYZ company. My job's really hard. I work on this client. I work on that client. Oh, so what's your experience with your boss?
So it's like an interview.
Pretty good, blah, 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 blah. What's your salary? I'm not comfortable saying, oh, so what do you do exactly with it? Okay, can you shut up with your questions?
Sometimes they're not even listening to the questions.
Exactly.
They're just asking.
They're going down the checklist.
It's a script. It's an NPC script.
Basically. And then you have your people who are active listeners and who don't ask questions. I'd say, Jay, you're a perfect example of that. It's someone who really listens to you, but don't understand or don't feel a need to ask questions because their attention is on you. And finally, you have the last aspect, which is your active listener and the people who ask questions. I'd say, Kevin, you're starting to become really good at that. Mm-hmm. And that's the best person to talk to, is the person who listens to you, asks you questions, wants to be more interested in you. And a lot of people don't realize, but the best conversationalist is not the person who talks, is the person who asks the questions because he lets other people talk. And I think for podcasts, it's super important when you have a guest to let the other people talk.
I think that in terms of kind of leveling up my communication skills over the last year, I did 2 big things, right? I started a sales job and I'm doing this podcast. And that's the biggest thing I learned from both experiences is asking questions is the most important part. Active listening and asking questions. In sales, they tell you whoever's asking the questions is in control of the conversation.
100%.
And same thing we had to learn here, right? And that's such a departure from how I used to communicate, because I'm used to communicating in social settings and parties. And that's just about like kind of grabbing the attention, saying interesting things, being entertaining, right? And so when I first came into this experience of the podcast and also sales, it was a huge learning curve. Like my first, I would say, dozen sales call, I didn't say a thing. I just, because, the direction I saw my mentor taking the conversation was not at all where I would have taken it. Same thing with watching Dany and giving us directions. Like what he would do in that situation, the questions he would ask was not even, how I thought to approach it. So I think like, yeah, so asking questions is a big thing. What other kind of etiquette or things to be mindful of when speaking in this kind of format?
I think the two biggest thing I can think of right now, well, three. Number one is don't jump over someone. And you realize that a lot of podcasts, you have different guests, correct? And when you have different guests with different opinions as you, we're lucky, us three, we're basically three brain cells left who think the same way. So we basically are on the same wavelength, but sometimes you have someone who disagrees with you, and cutting people off, talking loudly over someone makes you look bad. You listen to people's opinion, then you ask them questions. Your goal is not to change people's opinion, is to listen. And I feel that people should learn how to basically mold their perceptions in life, right? You're never that one person. Let's say if someone really believes that art is not a career, then you talk to Jay, you talk to me. It's like, how much you make? Oh, doesn't matter. I want to improve. No, it doesn't matter. But like, how can you have a career if you don't make a lot of money? You see how you start getting defensive over yourself because it makes you feel some type of way that the person has a different input than you. Number two, I think, wait, I lost my train of thought. No, okay. So I think number two is also learn. So number one was to not jump on someone. Honestly, I fucking forgot. That's
Number two, don't forget your train of thought.
yeah, definitely number two is forgetting.
Daddy's not used to talking this much right now.
Yeah, honestly, like I'm the guy who just
Thinking
sits in
too
the
much,
back and like just chill out. I think another thing is also be concise with your thoughts, right? Some people like to ramble and go on with their things, and then it starts becoming long. It's like, just get to the point already.
Yeah. And I think like we've seen progress in all of those things, right? Since we've done this almost like 20 times now.
Yeah. What do you think, Dany? 30?
I think we're close to 20.
20?
20 episode
20
easily.
episodes.
We skipped
And
over some.
Also, I think something we realized pretty recently, maybe a couple months ago, was being present, right? So once we got all of the technical the technical aspects of conversating on the podcast down, that's one step. The next step is the content, right? And I felt like, in our early episodes, we were still learning on how to speak on the pod, that we weren't able to really craft the conversation as
one
well
thing
as
at a time, right?
one thing at a time, right?
It was tough.
And so recently, the advice kind of we remind each other before going on is just be present in the conversation.
Yeah, we were meditating for a couple seconds there for the pod. Just
yeah. And I feel like that's the next hurdle we have to get over. I think we're still learning in that aspect. But I really like how you can clearly see kind of
the evolution,
right?
Oh, I remember. Another point to having a podcast, it's not a pissing contest. A lot of people think that, ooh, I need to prove myself. I need to do this. I need to say that. I know, Kevin, you had a bit of struggles doing that. But then again, it's quite understandable coming from a place you are where a lot of people had negative perceptions of you. And so you had to prove them wrong. But the thing is that when you are knowledgeable about something, you don't need to talk much about it. I don't have to say that I'm a professional doing that. I'm just a guy who presses record and plays with buttons and mixes the audio. Because once you're the expert, once you talk, people want to listen to you.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty about it, is that you don't have to say much for people to listen to you. I think those were the biggest struggles that you guys had mostly. And the fact that going off topic, bantering, it's fun.
Leaving in the middle of the show.
Yeah.
So how would you rate us when you first encountered us, and how do you rate us now?
Definitely. I think when you first started, solid 3. It was
Let's go.
No.
Three's not bad. Three's not bad.
I'd say a solid 3 just because a lot of people didn't see, but if you guys actually look at the video, at times I would have to leer at Kevin or Jay to be like, talk closer to the mic. Stop doing that. Stop shaking your cup in front of the mic. Stop stalling. Stop bantering.
That sounds like Kevin only.
So that's one thing, right? Where you have to keep in mind is that this mic picks up a lot of things. And so a lot of people, when they don't know what to do, they kind of just stand there. They don't know what to do, and they just try to keep themselves busy instead of just listening to the person. That's an important thing to do for a podcast. And I think the final thing to keep in mind when talking about podcasts, about etiquette wise, not content wise, is to never ridicule people, right?
Well, never.
There's a way to talk to people on podcasts. There's a way to give some news to people, some valid criticism, right? If someone says something wrong, you don't want to say, oh, do this, do that. Or let's say, I remember this one time where we were talking to one of the hosts. I asked a question to the host, and Kevin just cut me in the middle of the conversation. He's like, oh, actually, I know the questions. I know the answer to that. It's super easy. And then he just talked instead of the host. And I just looked at him like, what the fuck?
Wait, who's the host?
JT.
Oh, the guest?
Yeah, sorry.
No, it was Waterboy.
Oh, it was Waterboy. Sorry. But
Yeah, Kevin had a bad fucking habit of that.
Yeah, I came from very low, negative proficiency.
But I think the beauty about it is that both of you were very open to learning new things.
Oh, yeah.
And
Sure.
even for me, as much as I know a lot of things about public speaking, I know a lot about technicalities, having the open mind to try something new, because I might be good as a technical guy and stuff like that. But James is a lot more creative than I. He has a vision that I don't see because James is not constrained to a box. Me working in corporate, I'm constrained to a box. I need to do everything the client says. Kevin, he has a lot more sales experience than I. He has communication skills. He's a lot more extroverted than all of us. And he has this vision, and he knows how to interact with people, get the hype up. And so when I say do stuff A, B, C, Kevin says, no, I think let's do it this way because it will hype people up and
Let's
it's
do
going to
C,
make people.
A, B.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the beauty about having all these people is that even I, as a person who's done this for almost a decade, I can learn from people who just started in this industry.
Yeah, we could always learn something
Yeah,
every single day.
I think that's the part of kind of trying this creative way of working. That's one part that I really love when kind of interacting and working with creatives, is this really open collaboration. Like you openness to collaboration. I'm happy to help you. At the same time, I can learn about what you're doing, and it's always new ideas. It's like nothing is structured because nothing has been done before. We don't have a precedent. Like on the job and these corporate jobs in school, you can always look at the past answers. You can always look at how they did this in precedents. Here, it's like, the setup we have now went through maybe like a dozen iterations, right? We first started out like this. We had to change it because of the angle, and we lost the mic stand, we lost the light, we lost the camera, so we have to adapt. So all of this is reflected in the end creative product, and I think that's amazing. Like I've never really worked in this type of space.
So being creative nowadays is so valuable because we're considered as problem solvers now. So I saw a picture on social media the other day, and it's a bike company, right? So they're shipping bikes online, and they had a lot of problems with the shipping because they kept breaking during the shipping from Europe to North America. And what they did was they put it as the box. They put it as a TV, like a TV box. And there was a TV logo on the box and the bike in the middle. So the shipper would assume it's a TV, so it's please be fragile, right? But there's a bike inside. So that's how creativity can be used into problem solving. Just like last time when we had that podcast, when we had Mike over, didn't we use one of my selfie sticks as a stand, and we just taped it?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
duct taped it. That was
It's
ghetto.
like, yeah, it's being ghetto, but it's being creative to solve problems, and that's the value in creativity.
Yeah.
And I think being creative, a lot of people keep saying that they're not creative minds, but it's just because they're not used to navigate different issues, right? As much as there is a problem, an obstacle that you have to overcome, people haven't seen that obstacle enough to be able to overcome it. Let's say if I just take Kevin, you're in a sales call. First thing, you want to sell a product to the guy. The guy says, I don't need it. You probably have a script that goes down the tree to be able to sell that product, even though that person doesn't want. But the first person who came up with that script had to problem solve his way down that tree.
So true.
So a lot of people think creativity comes from art, comes from, all music, all these other things, but they don't realize that creativity also comes within business, within
More
the medical,
structured.
exactly. It's to control the chaos, right?
Yeah. Deal with uncertainty because you don't know how this person is going to react. You don't know how this podcast guest is going to react to our question. You don't
Everyone's
know.
different. It's not like, we're not NPCs, right? It's like we're not predictable in that way, like 99% of the time.
And at the end of the day, podcast, sales, business, it's the people business. Yeah, you're dealing with people in all three examples.
And I think that brings back to the point of active listening. Active listening is so important because you need to ask questions to know what that person wants. You can't only just say your script and expect the person to receive it. Sometimes some people don't receive questions well. Sometimes you have a list of questions. And I think we started that at the beginning, right? I said,
our spreadsheet.
We have a spreadsheet. I have all the questions lined up. And then we got to certain topics, and then the person was talking, like, you know what? Fuck the questions. This is more interesting. So let me ask about this. And then the person went, well, I think with SKZ.
Yep.
I have all these questions about how he became an artist. And then at one point, he started talking about flow. And I listened to his flow and I said, your flow's a lot different. And it uses a bit of triplets. It uses a bit of that. And I have a bit of musical knowledge. So I hopped onto it, that question. And SKZ just went, oh, I never thought of it this way. But now that you put it this way, and you start talking and exploring a different avenue, and that's how you make and ask good questions.
So having the questions come from active listening rather than like a prepared
Exactly. And you don't even need to be knowledgeable in something, right? And I think that's the beauty of Kill Your Pride. It's to let go of your ego or your pride to say, hey, I actually don't know about this topic. Can you tell me more about it? Or I already know about this topic, but I'm willing to learn more about it.
So true. Well said.
And I think Kevin did a good job asking me to help him refine his speech to be less salesy and more empathetic towards people. Jay, I think Jay, for you, the thing that's different about Kevin is that you were very passive, less about asking questions, more about listening to people. But then you change your approach to ask certain questions. And for me, that leaves me so that I can fill in the gap between you two. Because I'm more the technical guy, I'm the encyclopedia of nothing and everything. But that allows me to learn different things based on your approach because I'm different the way I approach from James and Kevin.
Yeah, we all have different styles.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of our personality, right? MBTI, going back to that.
Oh, yeah. That episode was pretty good, actually.
Yeah. I mean, because we're both introverted, you're extroverted. So the way our dynamic is going, or the way our dynamic within the group, it's well balanced. Even though there is an imbalance, but I think Dany could maneuver well enough to keep it structured.
That's another big aspect of kind of running a podcast or doing any type of project or venture, right? The team.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's definitely our strongest asset.
Yeah.
Like everything else we had to improve, but I think what was great from the beginning all the way through the end is our team chemistry, how we deal with conflicts. Because we're not without our own conflicts, but I don't think there was one time where there was an irrational reaction or there was a fight. It never kind of got there, right? We were always able to kind of mitigate our way through it.
Are we talking about last week?
Last week, but before last week, there was definitely times where we didn't agree or we weren't getting our results. But
I think we were okay.
yeah, but that's because we all make an active effort
Sure.
to do
Oh
that,
yeah,
right?
no, exactly. You need to make the effort.
Yeah.
You need to care about the person
Yeah.
enough to be able to, you know what, there's a problem. Let's talk it. Let's fix it.
Yeah.
Move on.
And I remember that point where Kevin actually mentioned to me that he wanted his video to be a certain way or a certain podcast to be a
today?
certain way. No, not today, the other time where our pilot episode.
Oh yes.
He said, I wanted this way because it seems interesting. And James and I couldn't understand. We're like, what the fuck are you saying? I don't understand what you're saying. And then I said, wait, okay. Try to repeat that. Why do you want this? What format do you want? Let's go slowly through this. And it's a
So you had the
process of
idea.
accent.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty about podcasts. It teaches you active listening, which applies to real life too. And as I listened to Kevin, I realized that he wanted the same thing as James and I wanted. He just phrased it a different way, where his lack of knowledge in technicality made it so that he worded in his own vocabulary. And his vocabulary, semantics, is very important for some people, especially for me. Like if you say something photography wise in a different way, I might say, that's not how you say it usually. But me just going around the subject and converting my language to his language made it so that I understood and said, oh, you wanted to film that way. And Kevin's like, yeah. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. Like we broke our head for like 20 minutes figuring out this episode when we could have just asked him questions instead of arguing with him.
Wait, when was this? Today?
No, the pilot
this is pretty
episode.
early, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, even today too, when we were talking about how we should cut up the video and we start in a certain way. The fact that, you communicated to Dany, your reasoning behind that, and then Dany explaining why it shouldn't be that way or should be this way. And, we got it resolved. I think we got
it was very smooth. It was all like when we kind of have disagreements creatively now, it's all kind of business. It's not personal. It's just like we're just trying to figure out, like you said, engineering. Like, does this work? Why doesn't it work? What about from that angle? Would it, like, from that aspect, does it work? And then, sorry,
no gum in the podcast.
and then we do like a overview of the analysis, and we come up with
basically pros and cons.
Yeah, pros and cons.
And a lot of people, they don't realize that in the creative world, right? There's a certain way of doing something that is appropriate for some people. Like James, I'm not going to tell you, like, find a shirt first and design the logo. No, you're going to design your logo, then put it on a shirt. Yeah. That makes viable sense. Yeah. Right? But then I'm not going to go to Kevin and just go, okay, find your client and then build your sales pitch around the client. No, because you have one sales pitch that can be adapted to multitude of people. So a lot of people don't realize that in some industry, there's a certain way of doing something and their brains are hardwired to think that way. And so as a creative or someone who's actively listening or ask questions, you go and navigate around all of that and you start asking questions. You're starting to put basically your point of view. Why is it viable? Why is it not viable? To make sure that the other person understands that, hey, editing a video 3 times and then waiting 2 hours to upload it is not viable because it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
But then Kevin said, oh, okay, I understand. How about we just do it this way and not break our heads? I'm like, that's perfect. That's actually better than I thought.
Yeah.
And then he put in his other input that says, but I really want a good hook for our video. It's like, oh, but that's why shorts are there. And Kevin's like, oh, okay, so I'll just focus on editing the shorts. I'm like, oh, perfect. I didn't even think of doing that.
And then Daniel was like, this is nice to work together for once.
Yeah, because I
have different ideas,
I've heard you guys talk about some of your other project experiences. There was kind of
or get stuck on one thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem about creatives versus business people per se.
Mm-hmm.
Creatives have no plans and want to start everything.
Yeah.
And so it turns into a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
But then business people have
Purpose.
basically protocols, but never start anything
Yeah.
because everything has to be perfect
Yeah.
before they start it.
Mm.
And so having a mix of people who are business minded and creative can go
Can
around
learn.
and basically achieve a common
Purpose. Like
common purpose. Yeah.
like that's it's like the engine and the wheels. You know what I
Perfect.
mean?
Yep.
So
All right. Anything last to say? I think we are wrapping up this podcast. This was actually really fun topic, just bantering about
Doing this, yeah.
doing like
process
recaps,
of a
the
podcast,
process of a
yeah.
podcast. I mean, we didn't go over the technicalities of our equipment and everything else. And we didn't even go in depth about how to talk. This was basically just our difficulties and what we came about to be. And I'd like to recap that you guys started with nothing and you guys grown so much. Really proud to
Thanks,
say
bro.
that you guys are really great hosts now and you guys are able to do podcasts without me as like another host asking questions because Kevin got so good at asking questions. James got so much better at James got so much better at asking questions, but Kevin also got so much better at listening to people and not interjecting every second sentence.
Yeah, I had a big
so
big
dry.
transition.
That was
yeah.
so dry.
No, but I came to you with the knowledge that of where I was starting out. That's why I was so receptive to feedback.
Kevin
though.
feels hurt. Like, yo, what the fuck,
No,
bro?
I mean it's the truth. Like,
It's the hard truth. There you
because
go.
I was the one with the least experience on anything with recording yourself, right? You guys all kind of had some type of experience speaking to a camera.
No, it's
or
perfectly
whatever.
normal.
Yeah.
It's perfectly normal.
Yeah,
But that's the beauty of it
It is the
that
beauty of it. Yeah.
Kevin is the person with the least amount of experience, but he's also the one with the most growth among all of us.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
the one who's improved the most, and he went from 0 to a superstar.
Thanks, guys. I needed that because
We need
the majority of this episode was just shitting on Kevin, man.
So he's like close.
Kevin
He's
was
like,
poo poo, man. Kevin was-
look at his body language. He's like, fuck. Someone give me a hug.
I was getting hurt, man.
But I think definitely in the future, you guys are interested of listening more to these types of banter about how the behind the scenes, how we came about to be. Definitely, we'd love to do more of these types of podcasts. So I'd like to just close off with some end remarks. Jay, Kevin, do you have anything to say while I look for some songs?
Oh yeah, I mean, for myself, it's really nice. It's a really great experience to be starting this podcast with you guys. I'm learning a whole lot, and obviously, I've always been a listener, but it's good to know what my flaws are, what I can improve in, and the fact that we're doing this, it's like it's a learning process. I'm enjoying it, and it's just a great time every time we're around. When you're in town, we're having deep conversations. It's hard to be vulnerable on a camera, on a podcast, talking onto a mic, and being vulnerable and being honest with ourselves and to each other. It's really great.
Yeah, I think, it's holiday season, it's time, it's almost the new year. Been doing a lot of reflecting, like on myself, on my journey. And I'm just so proud of where we've come, where we started and where we are now. This is when we first started it, I had a vision, and this is as good as that vision was gonna get.
Yep.
Better, right? We still have a long journey to go.
Yeah.
We're just getting started.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited to see how we grow in the future. I think we're gonna have a lot of great milestones.
Yeah.
Um,
Great memories.
Yeah, great memories.
I think for me, it's good to have you guys there because as much as I am the type of person who always says I know better than most people because I have the most experience, it's nice to just let go of my pride and just say, hey, there's a lot more stuff to learn about, and having different people there with different experience tailors my teaching experience, my teaching abilities to different people, and just not saying this is the way to do it. It's either my way or the highway. And so I'd like to conclude this episode. My name's Dany.
James.
Kevin.
And remember to to Kill Your Pride.
Kill your pride.
전철 창가에 기억난 내 모습 길을 잃은 내 웃음 이젠 차가운 바람에 얼굴이